a scion of many worlds. The unconditional surrender of the remaining 4 slaver cities had gone well, which meant that Jasper had a mile-long list of things to do, even with the magic of delegation. All slaves had to be freed. Each one also had their share of the forgotten, which was a fucking nightmare to deal with in its own right. Not hard, just time-consuming and depressing as all hell. There was also the fact that the former masters were kinda pissy. This is usually solved by slapping around the self-centered pieces of shit a bit, but the more belligerent ones needed to be shown exactly what happened to their central capital. Takes the starch right out of the bastards. A few recordings to show exactly why their first impulse of being afraid of Jasper was not only correct, but an outright underreaction, if anything. You don't seem to understand Urthani. We are the most mighty. Our strength assures that we're the ones in charge. We're better, and that's why we rule. You might have found some ancient armor and a few mercenaries that will serve you, but this will not last. You think mercenaries are loyal? The moment your wealth runs dry, they will turn upon you, and I shall laugh. Not all the most mighty can quite put things together, though. Unfortunately, from what he can perceive of both her axiom flow and the rhythm of her heartbeat, she's entirely serious, which is an impressive level of self-delusion. So you think this wasn't coming, even if I didn't have my allies stomp upon you? He asks lowly. The prisoners were watching intently. This slaver is a Jorga, and she seems to be rallying around herself. She's not entirely stupid. She seems to be figuring out the evolutionary links between reptile and avian, which means the shape-shifting crocodile woman has some feathers and a large counterbalance on her back that is clearly a pair of wings. He slowly walks up to her, and rather than be intimidated by his sheer size, she expands to try and match him. There's a slight twitching around her eyes as she realizes just how difficult it is to balance all the intricacies of a truly massive physical shape. She's also hiding something. There's an axiom twist in her lower back that reminds him of the breakaway empire, but it's not a tattoo. It's a deliberate deformation in her scales, a ritual scar laced with axiom. She scans the area, checking on the crowd of slavers behind her, clearly looking for support as Jasper walks up and looms over her still. Then she moves. She moves quickly, with purpose and damn near flawless form, to draw a massive sword etched with runes from the marking on her back and swing it at the gap in Jasper's armor at the elbow. The fur bends along the blade but does not break. The sword jumps in her grip and she struggles to keep it in her hands as her razor-sharp weapon proves itself utterly insufficient at the task of cutting through the fur of an Orthani. Jasper merely raises an eye ridge and slowly reaches over with his opposite arm and grabs the weapon by the blade. It doesn't shatter against his claws. It's cut. His claws go clean through the metal with a deep noise that's halfway between a piece of paper being cut and a grindstone going to work. In front of the flabbergasted crowd, he slowly brings the now sliced-off blade and balances it on the head of the Jorgwa who attacked him with it. Now, what did that accomplish? What are you? She asks in sudden fear and astonishment. She's clearly thinking that the reason he doesn't have the armor on is that he doesn't need it, not that he doesn't have any. Ironically, both were true for the moment. I am an Orthani. What else could I be? He returns her question with a mocking inquiry of his own. With those claws? The sheer size and strange antenna? You're no Orthani. You look like one, but you're nothing like nothing. Her eyes fall on 2 of the volunteer Nagasha setting things up. One, a deep crag Nagasha, pumping her rattle to work an entire kitchen for serving meals, and the other, a hydro Nagasha already burning hot with a large bubbling pot resting on the coils of her scales. Are you? The Jorgua backs off as things start coming together. The sword blade tumbles to the ground and embeds itself in the dirt, and she jumps back to get some distance. The instant she stops, she finds a spear poking her in the nose, a spear that leads directly into Jasper's mouth. He gives her a few moments to examine it before retracting it. I am many things, but that's still an eartheny trait. Now, unless you want that spear to find your heart and your blood to find its way to my stomach, you're going to behave yourself, Jasper says and starts to turn away before turning back. By the by, they're not mercenaries. What? The giants in the unstoppable armor? They're not mercenaries. They're soldiers of the undaunted, like I am. I am the forward scout. They're my reinforcements, and tomorrow a proper platoon arrives. To do what? She demands. Take the whole of Lacran, Jasper replies. That's impossible. For something impossible, I'm almost done anyways. You were one of the final obstacles to crush. Now there's only the last few touches of diplomacy, and I might even finish up before the main force arrives. Wouldn't that be fun? What? You're nothing. In 1,000 years, you went from the holders of practical knowledge and the tools needed to reach the stars to a bunch of domination fetishists who are even doing that wrong in rock houses. You're pathetic. I'm more concerned about the fierce feather tribes. The only thing that kept your civilization alive was that you were the pawns and pets of the shadow, a delusional madwoman from the first generation who could twist the souls of others. You mean lady? I don't care what her name was. She's dead now. Her best efforts to destroy me only granted me greater strength, because that's what I do. I feed off the adversity I face. He then turns and regards what was a distortion he wasn't completely sure how to categorize yet with his antenna. His eyes tell him it's a flight of winged women. Winged women well beyond the new range of his antennae. Apparently, they're precise enough now that he gets distorted images from beyond the range. That's going to take some getting used to. If you want to live, then sit down and stop causing trouble. You have your final warning now, he begins, and she throws the hilt and tiny amount of blade right at his eyes. His new antennae are strong enough to bat it away, and his proboscis launches out. He didn't want this, but there will be nothing but riots if he doesn't. As she gasps and stares at the embedded limb and grasps at it, he extends the portions of his proboscis, and the heart is shredded before he starts pulling at the blood. Her body visibly withers as the sheer suction reduces her to a husk in moments. He folds the spearhead back up and withdraws it. A few drops of blood land on the fur near his mouth as he looks over the crowd. As tasty as that was, there aren't going to be any more volunteers for my next meal, are there? He asks, and threatens at the same time. He isn't even lying. The warm blood flowing through that idiot had been delicious. There are no takers for his offer. Good. Here is the main rule. Anyone who starts fighting my troops or me will be considered an enemy combatant. Enemy combatants are to be killed. The moment you start fighting us, your request for surrender from before will be considered nothing more than a filthy lie, and your next one will be ignored. So if you're particularly interested in death and what lies beyond, by all means try my expended patience. That one gets a lot of stares but no takers. Good. He activates his communicator to the army's frequency. Hey, spread it out, I'm going to be dealing with the incoming fierce feathers. See if this can't be solved with diplomacy. Hold on, let me do it. They're more likely to listen to me, Lady Allure says, and Jasper nods. Fine, but I'm still going to be there as backup muscle in case it all goes to shit, he says. Well, yes, obviously. I can't exactly use you as a threat if you're not there and fluttering menacingly. Fluttering isn't exactly menacing. It is when you do it. She counters, and he snorts in amusement. Ballwing, another of our kind, rises to greet us. She bears the armor of a midwife's protector. One of her archers states, and Kalasa, the Ballwing of the Eastern Fierce Feather Tribe, resists the urge to sigh. She rises with either the smallest grand glider upon Lacran or the largest eartheny ever born. Be on your guard. Any woman who can tame something so strange is to be taken seriously, Kalasa states. There had been lights in the distance, lights which had drawn the tribes, drawn them to witness the shattering of an empire performed as easily as a warrior grown might crush the fight out of an unruly child. The typical treachery, backstabbing, and literal nightmares that normally accompanied such things was completely absent. The cities were being emptied and the slavers were growing increasingly cowed and timid. "Fair winds carry fierce feathers," the armor-clad warrior exclaims, rising up to meet them. "Fair winds carry fierce feathers," Kalasa answers back. "Name yourself, warrior." "I am Mary Allure, honored paladin of the Grand Midwives, guardian of the Eastern Temple and ambassador to the Undaunted," Lady Allure announces boldly. Kalasa smirks. "Oh, a paladin of the Baby Makers? Well, isn't that special? I suppose the Baby Makers need to be babysat." Kalasa taunts. "They have their duty and I have mine," Lady Allure says as Jasper's deliberately slower pace brings him up behind her. "What is wrong with that Urthani?" Kalasa's archer demands. "The girl is good with a bow, but not with her mouth. Far less than with you." The Urthani answers in an impossibly deep voice that sends a shiver down her being. That wasn't fear, though. That was something else. "Lord Blue, please not now," Lady Allure says. "Sorry, that slipped out. I've gotten a bit more bloodthirsty, it seems." "That is the most literal use of the term I've ever heard," Lady Allure notes, and he shrugs. She then turns to the ball wing of the tribe. "Mighty ball wing, we do not wish for a battle of blood, but perhaps a contest of tales." The smile from the ball wing tells Allure that she just hit the nail on the head. She can, however, also feel a question from Jasper without him saying a thing. The ball wing points downwards and they begin to descend. "Contest of tales?" Jasper asks as they descend. "Boasting competition. It's how they judge others without a lot of observation or outright fighting them. Also, any ball wing worth the title loves to boast and has plenty to boast about. You wanted diplomacy? Here is diplomacy. If she likes your stories, she'll have them carried to other tribes, seeking both lies and recognition. If they catch you in a lie, they know not to trust you. If you're confirmed as being honest, she'll know to trust you. Until she truly knows, you'll be held at arm's length, but given a chance to prove yourself." "Thank you," Jasper says. "A chance is all I need." "Hey, Moth, how did you get your wings to have their own wings?" one of the fierce feather warriors asks. "You want me to start with one of my biggest boasts before we even touch down?" Jasper asks curiously. "How can having weird wings be something boast-worthy?" the warrior asks, and Jasper laughs. "It can be, if you had to earn them the hard way," Jasper notes calmly as they touch down. "Let them set up the boasting ring. You are to walk opposite of the ball wing as both of you boast of your greatest accomplishments," Lady Allure says as two warriors stick their spears in the ground and chase after each other. They then slam the butts of their spears into the ground and the small trenches burst into flame. "I shall begin. I have slain dozens in single battle. One sword tasted the blood of 26 in a single day." The ball wing begins, and there's some hooting and cheering as she starts pacing counterclockwise around the circle. Jasper matches her pace, although with his much larger size it makes him look very slow by comparison. "I woke up trapped and alone, in a place unfamiliar and unknown, weakened to the point of near helplessness. It took me minutes at most to escape with scarcely a scratch and a steadfast ally that even to this day would kill for me, and I for her." He counters, and there are some thoughtful looks and Lady Allure nods. "Was this witnessed?" the ball wing asks. "It was. It was my temple he escaped from, and I personally crossed swords with the ally he made. At the time, we were enemies." "Not enemies now?" the ball wing asks. "No, not now, and likely not ever again." Lady Allure says, silently thankful that her helmet is hiding the slight blush. "How do you explain that you've been carnal with someone when so few understand it?" Interesting, the Ballwing says before turning back to Jasper. Boast of a duel alone. I have faced the Northern Ballwing in direct battle and felled her with my bare hands. I have faced the dark mirror of the Star Seekers and bested my most vicious self in battle, earning the mantle of martial master in their order, the first in centuries to accomplish such a feat. That was witnessed as well. I threw him to the chamber of the mirror in hopes it would kill him. Instead, I simply made him stronger as he learned to feed on battle. Marvelous, the Ballwing says with a vicious smile.